I'm Sarah, 35, running my own art gallery in Boston. Being the black sheep of my family wasn't a choice, it was a label they gave me. Last month, when my mother declared, "Once a black sheep, always a black sheep," over our family vacation plans, something snapped inside me. I tore up those expensive Maldives resort tickets and took my best friend Mia instead. The 23 text messages my mother left after seeing our Bali photos told me everything I needed to know about where I stood with them. I'd spent a lifetime trying to fit in where I clearly didn't belong. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever felt like the odd one out in your family. Growing up in our affluent Massachusetts suburb, I always felt like I was cut from a different cloth than the rest of my family. My father, James, was a renowned cardiovascular surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital, and my mother, Catherine, was the quintessential socialite who chaired every charity committee in our town. My brother Thomas was the academic star who breezed through his classes and was destined for Harvard Law School from the moment he could speak. My sister Elizabeth was the perfect daughter who followed in our father's footsteps toward medical school. Then there was me, Sarah, the one who preferred sketchbooks to textbooks, the one who would rather spend hours watching how light changed colors throughout the day than memorizing multiplication tables, the one who asked questions at family gatherings that made adults uncomfortable. Why do we have to go to church if Dad says he's an atheist at home? Why does Uncle Robert drink so much at every holiday? Why can't homeless people just live in all the empty mansions? Each question earned me a sharp look from my mother and a gentle but dismissive pat on the head from my father. "Sarah's just going through a phase," they would tell relatives with tight smiles. But it wasn't a phase. It was who I was. I was 8 years old at our annual family reunion when I first heard the term that would define my place in the family for decades to come. "She's our little black sheep," my mother said to my aunt, not realizing I was around the corner listening. I don't know where we went wrong with this one. I didn't fully understand what it meant then, but I felt the sting of those words. I knew it wasn't good. I knew it meant I was different in a way that disappointed them. As we grew older, the differences in how my siblings and I were treated became more apparent. Thomas got the largest bedroom because he needs space for all his academic awards. Elizabeth got a new laptop because medical school applications are so competitive these days. I got reminders to be practical and that art is a nice hobby but not a career. When I was 12, my parents completely forgot my birthday celebration because Thomas had won a regional tennis championship that same weekend. They rushed out the door with him telling me they'd make it up to me later. They never did. I spent that birthday alone in my room painting a self-portrait that I later destroyed because the sadness in the eyes made me uncomfortable. Middle school was when I met Mia in art class. She was the first person who saw my artwork and didn't immediately suggest I find a more practical interest. Instead, she asked questions about my technique and color choices. She wanted to know the stories behind my paintings. With Mia, I didn't feel like a black sheep. I just felt like Sarah. Art became both my rebellion and my sanctuary. When my parents pushed me to join debate club like Thomas, I joined the mural painting committee instead. When they suggested I take AP Biology to follow Elizabeth's path, I took AP Art History. Each choice was met with sighs and concerned glances between my parents. By high school graduation, the pattern was firmly established. My parents attended the ceremony, of course. Appearances were everything. But while they threw an elaborate party for Thomas when he was accepted to Harvard Law, my acceptance to Rhode Island School of Design with a partial scholarship was acknowledged with a simple, "That's nice, dear. I hope you've thought about how you'll support yourself with that degree." I remember standing in our backyard during that graduation party, watching my parents beam with pride as they introduced Thomas to their friends. No one asked about my plans. No one seemed to notice when I quietly slipped away to my room where I packed a box of art supplies to take to Mia's house. At least there someone would celebrate with me. College should have been my escape from being the family disappointment, but even hundreds of miles away, their expectations and judgments followed me like a shadow. "We'll pay for your first year," my father informed me over a tense dinner before I left for RISD. After that, we'll see how serious you are about this art thing. Maybe you'll want to transfer to a business program by then. His words were clear. This was not a vote of confidence. This was their way of waiting out what they still considered a phase. I wasn't surprised when the checks stopped coming halfway through sophomore year. "We're teaching you responsibility," my mother explained during a brief phone call. Thomas and Elizabeth never needed this much financial help. The fact that they had fully funded both my siblings through graduation and beyond went unmentioned. So I worked. I waited tables at a cafe near campus during morning, shelved books at the library, during afternoons, and bartended on weekends. Between shifts, I squeezed in studio time, often working until 3 in the morning before crashing for a few hours and starting all over again. My grades suffered occasionally, but my art never did. If anything, the struggle gave my work an emotional depth it might otherwise have lacked. During my junior year, I met Professor Diana Reynolds. While other instructors appreciated my technical skills, Diana was the first to push me beyond technique into true artistic voice. "You're holding back," she told me one evening as she examined my portfolio. "These are skillfully executed, but I don't see you in them yet. What are you afraid of?" The question hit me like a physical blow. What was I afraid of? Failure judgment, or perhaps success on my own terms, which would only widen the gap between me and my family? Diana became more than a professor. She became the mentor and maternal figure I desperately needed. She invited me to gallery openings, introduced me to working artists, and sometimes just had me over for dinner when she could tell I was running on empty. When my first student art show opened, I sent invitations to my family 6 weeks in advance. The day arrived and the small gallery filled with fellow students and faculty. Mia drove 3 hours to be there. Diana proudly introduced me to several local artists. My family never showed up. No call, no text. When I phoned home the next day, my mother answered with surprise. "Oh, was that this weekend? I'm sorry, sweetie. Your father had a medical conference and Elizabeth needed help moving into her new apartment. You know how it is." I did know. I knew exactly how it was. I graduated with honors, and to their credit, my family did attend that ceremony. But even that accomplishment was diminished. "At least you stuck with it," my father said, which was his version of congratulations. "Such a shame you couldn't have applied this dedication to something more substantial," my mother added with a sigh. Thomas, now a junior associate at a prestigious Boston law firm, patted my shoulder. "Don't worry. Most art graduates end up finding real careers eventually." Only Elizabeth offered genuine congratulations, though even she couldn't resist adding, "Maybe you could do medical illustrations that would be a practical application." The years after graduation were lean and difficult. I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and took a job at a cafe while trying to build my portfolio and make connections in the Boston art scene. Every family holiday gathering became an exercise in deflection as relatives asked about my little art projects and when I was going to get a real job. "Sarah's still finding herself," my mother would interject with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Meanwhile, Thomas's law career and Elizabeth's medical residency were discussed in reverent detail. Their struggles were framed as noble challenges, while mine were just consequences of poor choices. When I landed my first gallery job as an assistant curator, I was ecstatic. Finally a foot in the door of the art world I longed to be part of. I called my parents to share the news. "Well, everyone gets lucky sometimes," my mother responded, "though I imagine the pay is dreadful." It was, in fact, barely enough to live on. But it was a beginning. I moved into my own apartment the following year. It was small and in an unfashionable part of town, but it was mine. I hung my own artwork on the walls, and for the first time felt completely comfortable in my space. No one to tell me my color choices were a bit much, or that my furniture arrangement was impractical. Slowly, I began building boundaries with my family. I stopped seeking their approval for my life choices. I limited phone calls to once a week. I declined invitations to events where I knew I'd be criticized. and I surrounded myself with people who valued me for exactly who I was. My chosen family grew. Fellow artists, gallery clients who became friends, my steadfast Mia and Diana, who continued mentoring me long after graduation. These were people who never made me feel like a black sheep. With them, I was just part of the flock. By my 30th birthday, I had worked my way up to managing one of Boston's more prestigious contemporary art galleries. The journey hadn't been easy, but each promotion had come through hard work, networking, and an eye for emerging talent that even my competitors respected. I'd saved carefully, and with some help from a small inheritance from my maternal grandmother, managed to buy a modest condo in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The purchase was a milestone that filled me with quiet pride. Unlike Thomas, who had received a substantial down payment gift for his Beacon Hill townhouse, or Elizabeth, whose medical center condo was partly funded by our parents, I had done this on my own. When I invited my family to my housewarming party, their attendance felt more like an inspection than a celebration. "It's certainly artistic," my mother said, eyeing the exposed brick walls and industrial fixtures I loved. "The neighborhood is improving, I hear," my father added, which was his way of saying it wasn't good enough yet. Thomas looked around with the expression of someone calculating square footage and property values. "It's a starter place, right? Good investment, though. This area should appreciate." Only Elizabeth seemed genuinely happy for me, though even she couldn't resist a suggestion that I might want to paint over those bold colors if you ever decide to sell. As they left, my mother patted my cheek. "You're finally growing up, Sarah. Better late than never." I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, exhausted from the performance of being the daughter they wanted rather than the woman I was. Mia, who had stayed behind to help clean up, handed me a glass of wine. "You okay?" "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "At least they came." "Low bar," Mia muttered, but squeezed my hand supportively. As my professional reputation grew in the Boston art scene, my mother seemed increasingly determined to mold me into a version of myself that fit their family image. The invitations to family events came with suggestions about what I should wear, who I should bring, and even what topics I should avoid. "The Richardsons will be at the Christmas party," she'd say. "He's on the hospital board with your father. Perhaps wear that navy dress we bought you last year, and try not to get into any political discussions this time." The navy dress in question was one she had purchased without consulting me in a style I would never choose for myself. It hung unworn in my closet tag still attached. Thanksgiving that year marked a turning point. We gathered at my parents' home, the same house where I'd grown up feeling like an outsider. Elizabeth brought her new boyfriend, a radiologist my parents immediately adored. Thomas arrived with his wife, Jessica, and their perfectly behaved 4-year-old son. I came alone wearing a vintage crimson dress I'd found at an estate sale and paired with my favorite handcrafted silver jewelry. My mother's face tightened the moment she saw me. "Oh, Sarah, couldn't you have worn something more conventional? The Abbotts are joining us and Cynthia Abbott is very traditional." "I like what I'm wearing," I responded, trying to keep my voice light. "And I'm 30 years old, Mom. I think I can choose my own clothes." "Of course you can, dear. I just thought you might want to make a good impression for once." The "for once" stung, but I let it go. We made it through appetizers with minimal tension, but during the main course my uncle asked about the gallery, and I enthusiastically described an upcoming exhibition I was curating featuring local artists exploring themes of identity and belonging. "That sounds fascinating," Elizabeth's boyfriend commented sincerely. "It sounds niche," my mother interjected. "Honestly, Sarah, I don't understand why you can't work with more accessible art. Something people actually want to hang in their homes." "People do want this art in their homes, Mom. The preview night is already fully booked with serious collectors." "Well, I suppose there's a market for everything," she said with a dismissive wave. "Though I can't imagine it's very lucrative. Not like Thomas's corporate clients, or Elizabeth's surgical specialty." I put down my fork. My career is both creative and financially viable. The gallery has grown 30% since I took over management. Now Sarah's getting defensive, my mother announced to the table as if I weren't present. She's always been our dramatic one, so sensitive about her little hobby. It's not a hobby, it's my profession, I said, feeling heat rise to my face. And I'm not being dramatic, I'm correcting inaccurate assumptions. See what I mean? My mother stage whispered to my aunt. Always needs to be the center of attention. I looked around the table for support, but Thomas was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. Elizabeth gave me a sympathetic glance but remained silent. My father cleared his throat. Sarah, let's not turn dinner into a production. Your mother means well. That was my father's role in the family dynamic. Never defending me, always keeping the peace by asking me to absorb whatever barbs were thrown my way. Later, as I helped clear the dishes, my father pulled me aside. You know how your mother gets Sarah. Couldn't you just let it go for family harmony? Why is it always my responsibility to maintain family harmony by accepting disrespect? I asked quietly. He had no answer for that. The following month, my gallery held the opening for the exhibition I had mentioned at Thanksgiving. It was a career highlight featuring artists whose work challenged conventional narratives about belonging and identity. The irony wasn't lost on me. To my surprise, both Thomas and Elizabeth attended. Thomas came alone, explaining that Jessica had a charity event, but he seemed genuinely interested in the artwork, asking thoughtful questions about several pieces. Elizabeth arrived with her boyfriend and pulled me into a tight hug. This is amazing, Sarah. Truly impressive. My parents had sent a text that morning. Sorry we can't make it tonight. Your father has a department dinner he can't miss. Have a good show. No mention of the fact that the date had been on their calendar for weeks. Standing in that packed gallery surrounded by people who valued art and ideas, with Mia beaming proudly by my side, and even my siblings showing up, I felt a strange mix of achievement and longing. I had created this success, this world where I belonged, and yet a part of me still wished my parents could see me clearly just once. That night I decided to start therapy. It was time to understand why their approval still mattered after all these years of evidence that it might never come. Every summer since I was a child, my family has taken an annual luxury vacation. These trips to exclusive resorts in the Caribbean, Hawaii, or Europe were mandatory family bonding time, according to my mother. In reality, they were carefully orchestrated photo opportunities where we performed the role of the perfect family for her social media and country club friends. For me, these vacations held a particular kind of torture. I was included yet separate, given a room at the far end of the hall or in another wing entirely. Excluded from activities under the guise of, oh, Sarah wouldn't enjoy deep-sea fishing, golf, tennis, without ever being asked. At breakfast gatherings, my sleep schedule, I've always been a night owl, was mocked. During dinner, my career achievements were minimized, while my siblings were celebrated with toasts. In family photos, I was positioned at the edge, easy to crop out if needed. Still, year after year, I went. Some stubborn part of me hoped that this time would be different. This time, they might see me. This past spring, my mother created a family group chat to plan our summer vacation. We're thinking the Maldives this year, she announced. Amelia Richardson just returned from the Royal Palm Resort there and says it's absolutely fabulous. 5-star everything. My brother immediately chimed in with enthusiasm. My sister asked practical questions about the best time to go. I scrolled through the resort website before responding. It looks beautiful, I wrote. But I notice most activities are couples-focused or extreme sports. Any options for someone traveling solo who prefers cultural experiences? My question went unanswered as they continued discussing scuba certifications and couples massages. Hours later, my mother sent a separate message directly to me. We'll book you for the batik workshop. That's artsy enough for you, right? And there's always the spa if you get bored. I tried once more in the group chat. What dates are we considering? I have a major exhibition opening in mid-July that I can't miss. Again, no direct response. The conversation continued around me as if I hadn't spoken. Then my mother announced that she had gone ahead and booked July 14th through 21st because it's when we could get the best oceanfront villas. July 16th was my exhibition opening, the show I had been working toward for over a year, the one that would feature my own artwork alongside the contemporary artists I had discovered and nurtured. I had mentioned this date repeatedly in family conversations over the past 6 months. I called my mother directly. "Mom, I can't make those dates. My exhibition opens on the 16th. I've told you about this multiple times." "Oh, Sarah," she sighed. "There's always another little art show. This is family time." "This isn't just another art show. This is the biggest opportunity of my career. My artwork will be featured alongside established artists. Critics from major publications will be there." "I don't understand why you always have to make things difficult," she said, her voice taking on the familiar tone of martyrdom. "Everyone else managed to arrange their schedules." "Because everyone else's commitments were taken into consideration during the planning," I pointed out. "Mine were deliberately ignored." "That's not true," she snapped. "You're being dramatic again. Can we please just move the trip 1 week earlier or later? I'll handle changing my own reservation if that helps. The booking is done. Deposits are paid. Your father has already arranged coverage at the hospital. It's not our fault you decided to schedule your hobby during family vacation time." I took a deep breath. My career is not a hobby, and this exhibition has been on the calendar for months long before this trip was even discussed. "Sarah, when are you going to grow up and accept your place in this family? Once a black sheep, always a black sheep. Stop trying to make everyone else accommodate your need to be different." Her words hit me like a physical blow. After all these years, after all my accomplishments, this was still how she saw me. Not as a successful gallery manager, not as an emerging artist in my own right. Just the family problem, the black sheep. "I won't be joining you in the Maldives," I said quietly. "Don't be ridiculous. Of course you will. I'll have the tickets sent to you next week. Just reschedule your little show." "No." "Excuse me?" "No, Mom. I won't reschedule an exhibition that has been planned for over a year and involves a dozen other artists, critics, and collectors. I won't devalue my career again to maintain the illusion of family harmony. Not this time." "We'll discuss this when you're being more reasonable," she said and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, phone in hand, shaking with a mixture of anger and an odd sense of relief. Something had shifted inside me. A lifetime of seeking approval had suddenly finally exhausted itself. In therapy the next day, I recounted the conversation. "How did it feel to say no?" Dr. Harper asked. "Terrifying," I admitted. "But also, right. Like I was finally standing on solid ground." "And what do you think will happen next?" "The usual guilt campaign. Dad will call to tell me how disappointed Mom is. Thomas will send a pragmatic text about family obligations. Elizabeth might actually understand but won't openly support me. They'll make me feel like I'm breaking up the family by having a boundary." "And how will you respond?" I thought for a moment. For once in my life, I'm going to choose myself. True to prediction, the pressure campaign began. My father called that evening with his gentle yet firm voice of reason. "Your mother is very upset, Sarah. You know how much these family trips mean to her." "I understand that, Dad. But my career matters too. Would you ask Thomas to miss an important court case or Elizabeth to reschedule a surgery?" His silence was answer enough. Thomas texted, "Just come for part of the trip. Fly in after your event. Peace in the family is worth the compromise." Elizabeth surprised me by calling. "I get it," she said quietly. "I really do. But is this the hill you want to die on?" "It's not about this one trip," I explained. "It's about a lifetime of being treated like my passions and work don't matter." A week later, an envelope arrived from my mother. Inside were my portion of the travel documents and a handwritten note. "Last chance to be part of this family. Don't disappoint us again. Not we miss you, or we want you with us. Just another ultimatum." I held the expensive resort booking in my hands, the embossed logo catching the light. These papers represented so much more than a vacation. They were a symbol of conditional love of belonging that came with conformity as its price. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I stared at the resort tickets in my hands, feeling their weight, both physical and emotional. Years of seeking approval, of contorting myself to fit into spaces too narrow for my spirit, of accepting crumbs of affection and calling it a feast. Enough. With deliberate movements, I tore the tickets into small pieces. The sound of ripping paper was startlingly loud in my quiet apartment, each tear a declaration. I was not going to the Maldives. I was not going to spend another week being the family disappointment. As the torn pieces fluttered to my coffee table, an idea formed. The money I had saved for incidental expenses on the family trip could fund a different kind of vacation, a trip where I wouldn't have to apologize for my existence. I called Mia. "How do you feel about Bali?" I asked when she picked up. "The Indonesian island." "Never been. But it's on my travel bucket list." "Why?" "How does next month sound? My treat." "Sarah, what's going on?" I explained the family vacation situation, the torn tickets, my sudden desire for a completely different experience. "Let me get this straight," Mia said. "You're skipping your family's luxury resort vacation to go to Bali with me instead. Won't your mother have a nuclear meltdown?" "Probably. But I'm 35 years old, Mia. It's time I stopped organizing my life around avoiding my mother's meltdowns." "Then hell yes, I'm in. But you're not paying for everything. We'll split costs." We spent that evening researching Bali, focusing on the art village's temples and cultural experiences that both of us craved. No preset activities designed for Instagram perfection. No schedule dictated by others' preferences. Just authentic experiences and the freedom to follow our interests. I booked flights that would get us back just in time for my exhibition opening. Unlike my family's luxury resort, we chose a mix of accommodations, from a boutique hotel in Ubud to a beachside bungalow in Ahmed. Places with character rather than just a high price tag. The weeks before our departure were consumed with exhibition preparations. I worked longer hours than usual, ensuring everything would be perfect, even without the full week I'd planned to dedicate to final arrangements. My assistant curator Rose stepped up remarkably, offering to handle last-minute details while I was away. "This show matters to me too," she said simply, "and you deserve this trip." The day my family departed for the Maldives, I received a final text from my mother. "Not too late to join us. Your ticket has been reissued." No acknowledgement that I had an exhibition. No recognition that I had clearly stated my decision. I didn't respond. Bali was transformative. From the moment we arrived, breathing in the fragrant tropical air, something inside me began to unclench. Mia and I spent our days exploring ancient temples, their stone surfaces cool beneath our reverent fingers. We wandered through villages where generations of artisans created batik fabrics, intricate wood carvings, and silver jewelry. In Ubud, I took a painting workshop from a local master whose approach to color and light awakened new possibilities in my own work. In the evenings, we sat at small local restaurants, eating food so vibrant with flavor, it seemed to wake up parts of myself that had been dormant. We hiked to waterfalls hidden in emerald jungles, and woke before dawn to climb Mount Batur, reaching the summit just as the sun crested the horizon. Sitting there watching golden light spill across the landscape, I felt a profound sense of peace, of rightness. "Thank you," I said to Mia as we watched the sunrise. "For what?" "For being the family I chose. For seeing me as I am, not as someone wishes I would be." She bumped her shoulder against mine. "Right back at you." Throughout the trip, I posted photos on social media. Not the carefully staged, filtered images my mother preferred for family vacations, but authentic moments. Me with paint-stained hands after the workshop. Mia and I laughing as monkeys investigated our backpacks at a temple. The two of us with a Balinese family who had invited us to join their ceremony, our faces alight with joy. I was having such a wonderful time that I completely forgot my family would be seeing these posts. Until the messages started. The first came 3 days into our trip. I see you had time for a vacation after all, just not with your family. I didn't respond. The second, hours later. Who is watching the gallery while you gallivant around the world? Again, I didn't engage. By the fifth message, her tone had shifted from passive-aggressive to openly hostile. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, with public disrespect. The messages kept coming increasingly frantic and accusatory. By the time we boarded our flight home, she had sent 23 texts. The last one simply read, "Your father and I need to speak with you when we return. This behavior has consequences." For the first time, that threat didn't fill me with dread. What consequences could be worse than continuing to live a half-life forever seeking approval that would never come? Mia scrolled through the messages as we waited at our gate. Wow, she really went off the deep end. Are you okay? I considered the question carefully. Actually, yes. I feel clearer than I have in years. We landed in Boston 2 days before my exhibition opening, just enough time to overcome jet lag and make final preparations. The gallery looked magnificent. My assistant curator, Rose, had handled the last-minute details beautifully, and the artwork, including 5 of my own pieces, was displayed to perfection. Opening night exceeded all my expectations. Critics from Art News and the Boston Globe attended. Collectors circled the room with serious interest. Several pieces sold within the first hour, including one of mine. Standing in that space, surrounded by people who valued art and ideas, who saw me as a professional with vision and talent, I felt a completeness I'd been seeking my whole life. Diana, my former professor and mentor, pulled me aside midway through the evening. "I am so proud of you," she said, her eyes bright with emotion. "You've created something extraordinary here, Sarah. Not just the exhibition, but a life on your own terms." I hugged her tightly, grateful beyond words for her presence in my life. My phone had been silenced for the event, but when I checked it later that night, I found more messages waiting. My family had returned from the Maldives, and they wanted answers. My mother's final text was the most direct: "We'll be at your apartment tomorrow at noon. Be there." I slept surprisingly well that night, waking to sunlight streaming through my windows and a sense of calm determination. Whatever came next, I would face it as the woman I had become, not the perpetual, disappointing daughter I had been cast as. At precisely noon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find not just my parents, but Thomas and Elizabeth as well. A full family intervention. Their faces wore varying expressions. My mother's cold anger, my father's disappointment, Thomas's uncomfortable determination. Only Elizabeth looked uncertain, hanging slightly back from the group. "May we come in?" my father asked with formal politeness. I stepped aside, allowing them into my living room. No one sat. My mother spoke first, her voice tightly controlled. "I think you owe us an explanation for your behavior. What specifically would you like me to explain?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Don't play games, Sarah," she snapped. "You know exactly what. Refusing to join the family vacation, taking someone else instead, flaunting it all over social media. It's a slap in the face after everything we've done for you." I took a deep breath. "I told you months ago that I couldn't miss my exhibition. It was the most important event of my career so far. You scheduled the family vacation during that time anyway, and expected me to cancel my professional commitments." "There are exhibitions every month," my father interjected. "Family should come first." "Would you have asked Thomas to miss an important court case or Elizabeth to reschedule a surgery?" "That's different," my mother said dismissively. "Why? Because their careers matter and mine doesn't. Because they have real professions with responsibilities to clients and patients. You hang pictures on walls for a living." And there it was. The truth I had always known, but they had never stated so baldly. I am the managing director of one of Boston's most respected contemporary art galleries. I said, my voice steady despite the hurt blooming in my chest. I discover and nurture artistic talent. I build cultural spaces that challenge and inspire people. And I am an artist in my own right with work that now sells to collectors. That is my profession. Those are my responsibilities. This isn't about your job, Thomas cut in. It's about loyalty to the family. Is it? I asked, turning to him. Because from where I stand, loyalty seems to only flow in one direction. I'm expected to cancel my commitments for family, but when have any of you ever done the same for me? I walked to my bookshelf and retrieved a small box. I've been in therapy for the past year, working to understand our family dynamic. My therapist suggested I collect evidence of patterns I thought might be just in my head. I pulled out a stack of photographs. Here's Thomas's law school graduation. The whole family flew out. Dad canceled surgeries to be there. Here's Elizabeth's white coat ceremony. Mom rescheduled her charity gala to attend. I placed them on the coffee table. And here's my college graduation. Dad, you left immediately after the ceremony for a conference. Mom, you spent most of the day on the phone arranging Elizabeth's apartment move. Next came printed emails. Here are the family responses when Thomas made junior partner. 62 congratulatory messages. And when Elizabeth completed her residency, 48 messages of pride and celebration. I laid them beside the photos. And here are the responses to my first gallery management position. 3 brief acknowledgments, all containing some variation of lucky break or finally settling down. Finally, I placed my mother's note beside the rest. Last chance to be part of this family. I looked up at them. This is what I've been trying to tell you for years. In this family, I have never been enough just as I am. My mother's face had flushed an angry red. So you're the victim here after your selfish, ungrateful behavior. I'm not claiming to be a victim, Mom. I'm simply pointing out a pattern that has existed my entire life. I was labeled the black sheep before I was old enough to understand what it meant. Every choice I made that didn't align with your vision was treated as rebellion rather than self-discovery. My career has been dismissed as a hobby, while my siblings' paths were celebrated as achievements. That's not true, my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I turned to him. When have you ever defended my choices with the same enthusiasm you've shown for Thomas and Elizabeth? His silence was answer enough. The problem isn't that I missed one family vacation, I continued. The problem is that I finally refuse to keep playing a role that requires me to diminish myself to maintain family peace. Elizabeth spoke for the first time, her voice quiet. She has a point. We do treat her differently. My mother turned on her with a glare. Don't encourage this behavior. It's not behavior, Mom. It's her life. Elizabeth moved to stand beside me. And Sarah's right. We scheduled this trip knowing it conflicted with her exhibition. We would never have done that to Thomas or me. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we haven't always been fair, he admitted reluctantly. My mother looked at us all with disbelief. I can't believe what I'm hearing. After everything your father and I have sacrificed for this family, the opportunities we've given you, the advantages. I'm grateful for those advantages, I said sincerely. But love and support shouldn't be conditional on becoming who you want me to be, rather than who I am. My mother's face hardened. If that's how you feel, then perhaps it's time we stop trying. You clearly don't want to be part of this family on our terms. Catherine, my father cautioned, looking alarmed. No, James. I'm done walking on eggshells around her sensitivities. She needs to make a choice. Either she apologizes for this disgraceful behavior and recommits to being a proper member of this family, or she can go her own way. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and final. This was the crossroads I had been approaching my entire life without realizing it. I won't apologize for valuing my career, I said softly. I won't apologize for taking a vacation with someone who celebrates rather than criticizes me. And I won't apologize for finally standing in my truth after decades of trying to contort myself to fit your expectations. My mother gathered her purse. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Don't call us until you've come to your senses. She headed for the door, my father trailing behind her with an agonized expression. Thomas hesitated, caught between sides. This isn't what any of us wanted, he said. I know, I replied. But sometimes the hardest boundaries are the most necessary ones. He nodded once, squeezed my shoulder briefly, and followed our parents. Only Elizabeth remained, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never realized how bad it was. It's not your fault. I should have seen it. I should have said something sooner. I hugged her. We were all playing our assigned roles. You're seeing it now. That's what matters. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, the physical evidence of our family's uneven love scattered across my coffee table. I had expected to feel devastated. Instead, beneath the sadness was something unexpected relief. The constant work of seeking approval I would never receive was finally over. I could stop trying to earn love that should have been freely given. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of grief and liberation. Extended family members called, some to express support, others to pressure me toward reconciliation. Family friends who had known me since childhood reached out with confused messages, having heard dramatically different versions of events from my mother. I maintained my boundaries while working through the complex emotions with my therapist. I learned that family estrangement, while painful, is sometimes the healthiest choice for all involved. That grief for the relationship you wished you had is just as real as grief for what was lost. And throughout it all, I had my chosen family. Mia, who brought over wine and takeout on difficult days. Diana, who continued to mentor me professionally and support me personally. My gallery colleagues who became friends. Even Elizabeth, who began calling regularly and meeting me for lunch, slowly building a relationship based on who we actually were rather than the roles we had been assigned. Most surprisingly, I had myself, the authentic Sarah who had been fighting to emerge for decades, the woman who could stand in her own truth without apology. 6 months after that confrontation in my apartment, life had settled into a new rhythm. My gallery was thriving now, featuring a dedicated space for emerging artists whose work challenged conventional narratives. I had continued creating my own art, developing a distinctive style that merged abstract elements with recognizable forms, exploring themes of belonging and identity. The exhibition that had been the catalyst for so much change had received positive reviews, launching me into a different level of recognition in the Boston art scene. Several of my pieces had sold to serious collectors, validating my dual identity as both gallery director and artist. My relationship with Elizabeth had deepened into something authentic and mutual. We had moved beyond the prescribed sister roles our parents had cast us in, and discovered we actually liked each other as people. She had even started bringing her boyfriend, now fiancé, to gallery events, and he had become an enthusiastic supporter of the arts. Thomas and I maintained a more distant but cordial relationship. He would occasionally text to check in or comment on a gallery event he had read about. We were finding our way toward a new understanding, one independent of our parents' influence. My chosen family had expanded. Mia remained my steadfast best friend, but now there were others too. Rose, my assistant curator, who had become both colleague and confidant. A small circle of fellow artists who gathered monthly to critique each other's work and share resources. Diana, still mentoring me through professional challenges and celebrating my successes. The most difficult shift had been establishing new boundaries with my parents. After 2 months of silence following our confrontation, my father had called. "Your mother misses you," he said, which was his way of saying he missed me too. "I miss aspects of our relationship as well," I replied honestly. "But I can't go back to how things were." "What do you want from us, Sarah?" It was the first time either of my parents had ever asked that question. "I want to be treated with the same respect you give Thomas and Elizabeth. I want my career and choices acknowledged as valid, even if they're different from what you would choose for me." I want to be loved for who I am not despite it. There was a long silence before he responded. I may have failed you as a father. The admission so unexpected brought tears to my eyes. We all failed each other in different ways, but maybe we can do better going forward. The path to reconciliation was neither quick nor easy. My mother struggled to acknowledge her role in our damaged relationship. Her first attempt to reach out came via a carefully worded email that managed to both express missing me and imply that the estrangement was primarily my doing. I responded with equal care, maintaining my boundaries while leaving the door open for a new kind of relationship. I'm willing to try again, but not under the old terms. I won't diminish myself or my work to keep the peace. Our first meeting was brief and awkward coffee at a neutral cafe. My mother made a visible effort to ask about the gallery without dismissive language. I asked about her charity work with genuine interest. Small steps on a long road. My father proved more adaptable, perhaps because he had always been more passive in the family dynamic. During a private lunch, he spoke with surprising candor. I should have protected you more, he said. From your mother's expectations, from the family's judgments, from my own inability to see you clearly. Why didn't you? He considered the question carefully. I think I was afraid. Your independence threatened the neat order we had constructed. Your questions made me examine choices I'd made without thinking. It was easier to support the status quo than face those uncomfortable truths. His honesty, though painful, was the most genuine connection we'd shared in my adult life. As summer approached, I planned another trip with Mia and 2 other friends, this time to Portugal. We would explore Lisbon's art scene and spend time in the coastal villages. When I mentioned the trip during a cautious dinner with my parents, my mother's lips tightened briefly before she visibly checked herself. That sounds interesting. Will you visit the Gulbenkian Museum? I've heard their collection is impressive. It was a small moment but significant, an attempt to engage with my interests without judgment. Yes, it's on our itinerary, I replied, and shared some details about the Portuguese artists I was particularly interested in seeing. The conversation wasn't perfect. Old patterns threatened to emerge several times, but we were trying, all of us, learning a new way to be family. 2 weeks before my Portugal trip, I hosted a gallery opening featuring a collaborative exhibition between established artists and community youth. Elizabeth attended with her fiancé, and to my surprise, both my parents came as well. My mother wore a dress in my favorite shade of blue, a silent peace offering I recognized immediately. As they moved through the gallery, I watched my father actually looking at the artwork, asking questions of the young artists with genuine curiosity. My mother made an effort to speak with my colleagues respectfully, no longer dismissing the gallery as my little project. Later, as the crowd thinned, my mother approached me where I stood speaking with Diana. This is quite an achievement, she said, gesturing around the gallery. I can see why you fought so hard to preserve your opening last summer. Diana squeezed my hand and discreetly moved away, giving us privacy. Thank you, I replied simply. I may never fully understand your world, my mother continued with unusual humility, but I'm beginning to see that I don't need to understand something to respect its value. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but from my mother, it was an extraordinary concession. The true test came at the end of the evening. As my parents prepared to leave, my mother hesitated, then asked, "Would you consider joining us for dinner next Sunday? Just family." In the past, I would have immediately agreed, eager for any sign of acceptance. But the woman I had become knew better. "I'd like that," I said. "But I should mention I have a brunch meeting with artists that morning, so I might be a little late." "We can push dinner back an hour," my mother offered, surprising me again. As I watched them leave, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Hope certainly, but tempered with caution. The patterns of a lifetime wouldn't be undone in 6 months. There would be missteps and backsliding along with progress. But standing in my gallery surrounded by artwork that challenged conventional narratives and created space for diverse voices, I understood something profound. Being the black sheep had been painful, yes, but it had also been my salvation. Without that tension, without the struggle to claim my authentic self against resistance, I might never have discovered my true path. I might have contorted myself into someone else's vision and lost myself entirely. The label that had once felt like a burden now seemed almost like a gift. Being different, being difficult, asking the uncomfortable questions, seeking my own way. Despite disapproval, these were the very qualities that had built my success and happiness. I took a final walk through the gallery before closing, appreciating the unique vision each artist had brought to the space. Different perspectives creating a richer whole. Just as my own perspective, once dismissed as inconvenient, had actually been my greatest strength. The journey wasn't over. Family healing is never a straight line, but a series of choices day after day to see each other more clearly and love each other more honestly. Some days would be harder than others. Some wounds might never fully heal. But I had found my ground. I had built a life that reflected my values and vision. I had created spaces, both physical and emotional, where I belonged completely. Perhaps that's the deepest lesson in being the black sheep. When you stop trying to belong where you don't fit, you find the freedom to create places where you and others like you truly belong. Have you ever been the black sheep of your family? How did you find your own path to happiness despite family expectations? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that being different isn't something to overcome, but something to embrace. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most painful labels can become our greatest strengths when we redefine them on our own terms.